Today's card of the day is Archaeomancer's Map. 2 and a white for an artifact with whenever Archaeomancer's Map enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic plains cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Whenever a land card enters the battlefield under opponent's control, if that player controls more lands than you, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. This card is really close to things like Burgeoning and Land Tax, but I'll get to that afterwards. Like, can we adore this artwork for this? I really do like the fact that it's like a weird abstraction of like a map, and they're like looking for something, and I think perhaps this shard of glass or artifact that they're holding is like they're seeing glass to find out that thing. I don't know about it, but I really do like that weird abstraction. Anyways, I can definitely see this card being just a white staple, mono white staple at least. If you're playing other colors, X white cards, maybe. But if you're playing 3 colors, I can definitely see how this is getting worse. I would say it's really close to burgeoning in that it does allow you to get lands into play and sort of like a ramp in white, but it doesn't necessarily require you to have lands like burgeoning, which is, I guess, to be expected if you're playing mono white or white X decks where they perhaps don't have access to green. It could be useful because green's the only one that can really get lands like that. But it's also like land tax in that if you have a bunch of lands, say you have a land tax and Archaeomancer's map, and you're just like sacking your lands for whatever reason, maybe like a Zerna Orb, and people are just playing lands, you're just gonna get a lot of value out of those lands. Like, this is a nice way to have some sort of weird mono white landfall deck happen, and I am all for that. I am definitely for, like, that's gonna be so weird, but it's gonna be cool because it's gonna be like a weird strategy enabled by this card. And of course, there's a few ways to tutor this out of white. None I would really suggest you do, such as having like artifacts tutor for this, or like you can do enlighten tutor. But I don't think it's that worth it. But it's a cool card to get. It's basically like a white divination, but also like a cultivate, in that the floor is a lot lower, but the ceiling is also higher. If you someone else is a single land ahead of you, and they play a land, I guess that land that they play is the land that makes them ahead of you. This is basically a cultivate with perhaps a way to abuse it, and that you have an artifact that you can bounce whatever and has an ETB that can basically draw you cards. But also, say you're just having a huge flooding problem, maybe you're playing against a green deck. Like, odds are there are more green decks than are white decks, and so this just becomes like a ramp card, and that's super useful in white because the white has a huge amount of just like, I'd say inefficient removal spells, and this just makes you able to catch up to them and play your inefficient, not only removal spells, but like inefficient cards. Like imagine a bunch of the cards like O-ring effects, especially the ones recently printed. Like I say this now because I was recently playing with the card because the card was sick, but like Ixalan's Binding, stuff like that. Like, it can hit any permanent type, but like, mind you, it's 4 mana for that effect, and having be able to get to that CMC, that amount of lands to cast those spells sooner, is always going to be super helpful, which is why I think this is going to be a white staple. I think it's particularly good for my deck, more control decks in particular, even like faster decks, not even aggro decks. Screw that, right? Like, this is this deck thinning, and if you have like extra ways to get lands from your deck for whatever reason, have things like Wayfarer's Bauble, or I think there's like that weird kite artifact that I can't name right now, but that rips basic lands out of your deck. You can play them with this. This just helps thin your deck, and it's super nice. It doesn't require you to go first, which is super great, because I know when I've played my white deck, I'm just like, okay, if I roll to go first, can I just go second? Like, is that a thing I can do? I'm not sure if that's an actual thing. I had to look at the rules for that. That might be a thing. But that would help me so many times because I usually have like land tax in those situations. And I'm just like, how am I going to use this land tax? How many? I really want to draw 3 extra cards for 1 mana. And this doesn't really have that problem. Of course, you're not going to get a bunch of lands just automatically. Like, you have to work for it a little bit. But this is like, nonetheless, this is like a really cool effect for white decks. I don't think you play this in like Selesnya decks, and I'm starting to think you don't play it in black decks either, just because black decks have a way of getting what they want as soon as possible, as well as having rituals that are able to get them there sooner than later, right? And so the need to get mana probably isn't there because you already have mana and you already have a way to get what you want. So this is very much, I think, like a roundabout way of doing what you want to do in black, but it's nice to have artifacts, right? If you want to play like the attrition game, if you want like a 3 mana divination in black when you can play Sign in Blood, I mean, go for it, I guess. Um, but if you're playing Selesnya, I mean, not Selesnya, if you're playing green with your white deck, I think you're just better off playing Cultivate, something like that, because generally green can benefit more off of using like Cultivate or stuff like that, because I don't know, I think it's just better. They don't have too many artifact synergies, if I recall. I could be wrong about that, but maybe you do value the permanent count or like the permanent type, which could be important for you. I wouldn't put it against people who play this in a green deck because other people are playing green decks too, so it's like it's like a standoff, right? Anyways, I gotta cut this short. I think this card is sick. You guys should definitely play it. But of course, tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys like this card? I think this card has been pretty great for me, and I would not put it past myself to snag Miller because this card is just I think one of my favorite ones out of C21. Yeah, peace out.